to this CVM News special. We are speaking today with criminologist Dr. Jason McKay about the Vybz Kartel appeal ruling and its consequences. How did it happen? Did anyone drop the ball? And what happens next? Just a breakdown of what has happened to this point and what to expect in coming weeks, months, and years. So we start with Dr. Jason McKay. What did you make of the ruling yesterday? That was Thursday by the Privy Council.
Well, I mean, it's pretty black and white. You know, there's a procedure that should have been followed when a jury is corrupted, and it wasn't followed. And there were some elements of what time you send out a jury, and that was also done. So, I mean, it's not that complex. It's not the other areas of evidence that everybody's discussing. It's just that particular element of it that the conviction was quashed because of.
So what does this mean? Interpret this for the justice system.
Well, I mean, it's a victory for jury tampering, I think. You know, I mean, we wouldn't be here having this conversation if the jury was not tampered with. And remember, this isn't an allegation. Somebody was convicted for trying to bribe the jury to get an acquittal. So you don't know who the person is that stimulated that behavior, but nevertheless, it's someone who was trying to achieve an acquittal. This now has resulted in the long term of probably having to do over the entire trial. So it is a victory for jury tampering. And I've often said, and I've been in very public forums, that the jury system needs to go. It's impractical, it's outdated, it's backward, and it's for an environment where you actually have control of your society and you have control of the safety and security of society that we don't have. So we can't afford that type of system.
So currently, can you break down what obtains in our jury system?
In what respect?
In terms of what must be there and why you need a jury in a certain trial like this.
Well, the whole idea is the principle that you must have a jury of your peers. But the law allows for judge-alone trials. It's just that the defense has to agree to it. And in this particular case, because they had lost one juror already because of complications regarding association with one of the jury's children, yes, being in custody with the accused, and the second one now was a corruption attempt. So because of the law, you had to keep one back. The same one who actually had tried to corrupt the process has still had to remain on the jury. So it's not tidy. So if you didn't have that and you just had a judge alone, and Jamaican judges are basically incorruptible, and all studies have shown that it's one of the highest standards of any public sector employee we have. And internationally, you know, we rank as perhaps the most tamper-proof judge system in the world, for want of another terminology. Let them sit as the jury, let them be the jury and judge.
So is there any chance that we will see a judge-alone trial if this matter does go to a retrial?
Well, the defense would have to agree to it, and I don't see that occurring. So I'm saying, okay, we have the trial again, we have another jury, and then mystically it is corrupted again, and then we do this process again. And, you know, it's just because the chain is as strong as its weakest link, and the weakest link is the jury. It's because you're drawing citizens in one of the most unsecure environments in Pan America to now say you're going to now sit in judgment in cases of notorious gangsters. You know, it's not practical.
So what's the solution outside of a judge-alone trial to something like this, since we know it's a possibility that it could recur? How do lawmakers here or the authorities buffer against that?
Well, you go towards creating an environment where you have judge-alone trials. That's really the only solution, because as long as you have juries, you're going to have the possibility of corruption.
Understood. People have been asking since yesterday when the ruling was handed down, what is the likelihood that Vybz Kartel or his co-accused, now they're no longer convicts, so what happens for them in terms of bail? Can they apply for bail? Is it likely they'll get bail?
Well, remember, one in particular, Kyra Jones, is serving a sentence for another conviction, so there's no possibility of him getting bail. The other three, they could ask for bail, but I would say the fact that we're sitting here having this interview and the whole case has led here because of someone attempting to corrupt the last trial, it would be a very risky step to say you're going to give bail to these accused persons.
Even in the case of the famed entertainer who is ailing, it's alleged,
No, but I mean, there are lots of people who are not that well in prison, and there are facilities in place to take care of you, and you can even be a prisoner and be treated at a hospital under police guard. There's lots of prisoners right now at Kingston Public Hospital under police guard being treated. And whatever care you need, as long as you're under guard, you can get it, you know. So the system accommodates that.
Understood. Outside of what has happened in the UK, there are some people saying perhaps the fact that the Privy Council has sent back the matter to Jamaica may be time for us to start looking regionally to the Caribbean Court of Justice. I know it's perhaps a little bit outside of your remit, but what do you make of those suggestions?
Well, I've always supported the Caribbean Court of Justice. I think it's really archaic that we should still be going all the way back to the country that we were made independent from in '62 to be, you know, them saying, okay, if our decisions are right or wrong. It doesn't have a good look to it. It's impractical. They don't understand our environment. But they do make a very good assessment of the law, you know. And what they're looking at is the law. Not necessarily the evidence, but the law. And they're good at that. But I think Caribbean judges would be just as good at it, and I think it would be a lot cheaper. I see no reason why Jamaica won't basically sign into to be part of the countries that fall under the Caribbean Court of Justice.
Especially as we push now to separate ourselves from the Crown.
Right, it's certainly a direction. I mean, I listened to an interview with former Prime Minister P.J. Patterson, and he was saying it was never intended when they set it up in '62 for it to be an extended peer thing like this. It was supposed to be a temporary situation. Independence meant independent. We were supposed to be independent of them totally. You know, so I'm really, really hope that this is now a little, not saying they did anything wrong in this case, but I mean, there were other decisions they could have come to, but I mean, they are the attorneys, they are the judges of the facts. But I don't think it's time that, you know, we start to handle our own business. You know, we're not children. You know what I mean? We're an independent country of over 60 years.
One of the grounds on which the appeal was made had to do with the evidence that came in the matter from telecommunications provider Digitel pertaining to information gleaned from so-called conversations that were had by the accused at the time. How will this information be treated any differently this time around in a retrial, if that is where we go?
Just for some clarity, you know, that wasn't one of the grounds that the judges gave the appeal on. The judges gave the appeal based on the jury.
Right,
the
but
jury
there were
situation.
major grounds that the lawyers
there were several grounds, and I mean, those other grounds to me never had any real legal ground to stand on. I don't think there was anything wrong with the evidence, how it was presented or preserved or anything like that. It's just how people, you know, propagate stuff, you know, and they make one. I mean, I think former Commissioner Ellington made it very clear. The cell phone that they said was being used after seizure was actually a 1-second call off while the person was analyzing the phone. They're smartphones, they're touch sensitive. Okay. It can happen to anybody. But, you know, you get a little piece of fact and then you adjust the facts around it and you build on it and you make it into something that it's not. It is not anything significant. It's just something to run with on a news item. It has absolutely no relevance when it goes in front of judges. They don't watch the news and become influenced. Juries do. So you need to, which is why I say, when it goes towards judges at that level, you know, in our court, for example, in our high courts, or even in our parish courts, or the Caribbean court, or the British court, these persons are professional, and they're only looking at the facts.
So let's talk evidence preservation. We are aware this matter has been for about 12 to 13 years now. We know that in our justice system, sometimes we hear that information gets tainted or lost or anything of the sort.
It was the most professionally prosecuted and investigated case I have ever seen. I am confident that because it was still an active case before the appeal courts, I'm confident that they have their ducks in order.
And so the evidence should pretty much still all be there?
I have no reason to believe otherwise.
How would amendments to, for example, changes in our laws and all of that, how would that impact what we are going to see if we end up with a retrial? How would that affect those evidence?
Well, the only thing I think I see that really stands out to me is, you know, is it time to get rid of juries? You know, I mean, I'm not the only advocate for that cause. You know, a lot of persons are also believe that it's archaic and backward and has no place in an environment as volatile as ours. So I think that that's going to get some stimulation, you know, that that even if we don't get rid of juries, that there could be an overriding power that the judge can say, this one is going to be handled by a judge alone. You know, I think we could eventually get there, and I think that, you know, maybe down the line we could get rid of juries totally in criminal matters at least. You know, I think it could head there.
How does the publicity of such a matter in the courts impact potential jurors for such a retrial if the Court of Appeal goes that route?
Well, remember, you know, is that the option is always there for a judge-alone trial. If the defense has a problem with the publicity, then they have the option of a judge-alone trial.
The judge-alone trial might not necessarily favor.
Well, you can't have your cake and eat it. It can't be that you have a problem to the publicity around the evidence and it may influence juries. You know it won't influence a judge, so therefore agree to a judge-alone trial then. You have the option.
What's the worst-case scenario for the defense in such a matter?
He's going to be tried again, and if he's tried, him and his co-accused are tried again and found guilty again, they may not get the reduced sentence they got at the appeal prior to this. It may be that they will move forward.
What would be your salient message coming out of the ruling, going into this period of limbo as they await the decision of the Court of Appeal?
In what respect, though?
From a criminologist perspective, from what you've seen and heard in the particular spaces, I know you have connections in some of the communities. What is the general mood that you're picking up on, and what would your message be to the Jamaican populace, those anticipating just an acquittal?
I think they may be a bit optimistic. This is part of our legal system that cases can be retried. Cases have been retried on more than one occasion. It is nothing new. I see no reason to believe that they wouldn't retry this. You know, the grounds of appeal are very specific to someone tampering with the jury for the accused and to get an acquittal, not anything that was done by the prosecution. So it's because it's so specific to that, there's absolutely no reason I can see why they wouldn't go the direction of having the case all over again, as long as the capabilities exist within the investigative body, you know.
Would this be something a family, for example, the victim's family, be able to handle, emotionally speaking, going back, rehashing all the memories, or is that not likely to happen?
Well, this is a rough hit for them, man. I mean, they've gone through the trial, they've gotten justice, and then they've reached back to this. But this is the fairest justice system in the world. You must remember that. As far
the Jamaican justice system,
as far
despite the cries for justice?
No, man, as far as the accused is concerned, this is the fairest justice system in the world. This system was created to ensure that you get justice. It's not victim-centered, it's accused-centered, to make sure that the accused gets all opportunities. And I think it is the best in the world I've seen in respect of guaranteeing that that you get a fair trial. So you get the fairest trial of all in Jamaica. Now, that type of environment comes with its consequences, like this, that, you know, it's going to go to one level and the other level, and if it's not dead clean and clear and tidy, then it's going to come back to be done again. That's what you get when you have a very fair system. Now, we are coming from an era, we've been around for a long time, though it wasn't always like that. If you look on the trials that took place after the Morambe Rebellion, after the 1938 riots and so on, they weren't fair. You know, a lot of people don't feel good about the results that occurred in those trials. So because of our history, we now have created a system that, as far as accused persons are concerned, it is an extremely fair system. But that makes it a little bit harder on victims. You know, you have other environments in the world that are extremely victim-centered, but that makes it very hard on persons getting a fair trial. So that balance is always going to result in victims and their families sometimes not feeling too good about it.
I mean, a lot has changed over the last 10 to 12 years in the justice system. We've seen changes with, for example, there's a new Chief Justice. Justice Sykes would certainly be integral to a retrial of this nature.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that you could necessarily say that Justice Sykes would try the case. He has tried one of them already, of the same accused. Nothing to say that he couldn't try two. But I mean, of course, he's an extremely competent judge, as well as many others who are there that are also competent. I don't think the issue is who tries it. You know, I don't even think, in my opinion, that the judge in this case did anything wrong. It's just that when a jury is tampered with, it creates all of these issues, and you have a number of decisions you can take. He took a particular decision that the Privy Council doesn't agree with. Doesn't mean he did anything wrong, because you have a few decisions you can take.
Let's discuss who won, who lost. The prosecution, did they win, did they lose?
I mean, the prosecution being that it wasn't that it was thrown out. There are cases I am familiar with where it goes to the Privy Council and it's thrown out totally. So that didn't happen. It's just that the prosecution, despite their extremely good work on this case, they have to do it all over again. I mean, as I said, it was one of the best prosecuted and best investigated cases I've ever seen or I've ever researched. So I'm expecting that they'll do a pretty good job with it again. I mean, if I was in the defense shoes, what I would do is go in the direction of plea negotiation.
Okay. What about Cartel and his co-accused? Did they win? Did they lose?
No, they just got to do it again. It's not win or lose, you know. I mean, in many ways, you know, you have to wonder if they're, I mean, in our system, you know, I think it gives them a great opportunity to plea bargain now, because now it's going before the court, it's going to be tried again, you know, have the option to plea bargain.
What of the changes to, for example, the gun laws and all of that? Would those have any ramifications for a trial of this nature?
It's murder in charge, you know. It's not like you said, the gun possession issues are more a gun court matter, which sensibly so is tried by a judge alone. That is why when the gun court was set up in 1974, it was set up because of the serious state the country was evolving into. So it created a court that the judge alone could try it, you know, and it's in camera and all of that, because that was an environment where, you know, they were dealing with things they had never dealt with before, so they created the mechanism to deal with it. But that gun bill is more relevant to the gun court, not so much the murder court, you know.
Understood. Witnesses, we know that in certain matters, especially when it concerns our crime culture in Jamaica, witnesses tend to shy away from getting too involved in certain matters. In fact, sometimes we have to be sending out statements in the media, begging people who know something to come forward, even in secret, to say what they know. How are the witnesses in this particular matter?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not directly involved in the case. I don't know, but all I can say is that the last time the prosecution was able to accomplish presenting its witnesses to the court, and good evidence was given, and 10 members of a jury came to a conviction, and came to a decision to convict. So I've no reason to believe that they wouldn't be able to do so again if given the opportunity. So, I mean, I would hate to see this as the best example of how to get off of a crime in the case where a jury is concerned. I would hate this to be the poster child for that. I would prefer this to be a poster child that that shows the energy of the Jamaican prosecution and investigative teams, that they can, that no matter how much time no matter how much stuff you pull off, they're going to keep on coming till they achieve justice.
Understood. Any final thoughts as we anticipate the decision from the courts on this matter?
Well, just bear in mind from a media point of view that this case is now back before the court, so you have to be extremely cautious. We can't control social media, but it's very important that traditional media does not put out anything that in any way, you know, can come to haunt the prosecution. You know, we have to be very guarded now as to what you go with, you know, and that's something that, you know, I really wish we could get social media to be a little bit more responsible and to hold YouTube accountable for when when things just go on YouTube and, you know, most you can do is get it taken off and it's maligning persons and so on. But traditional licensed media needs to be very careful about what they put out with this type of case, so that not only can the prosecution achieve its means, but also that the accused can get a fair trial. And that's very important too, because although I would like to see a system that was more victim-centered, it's very important that, you know, persons do get a fair trial.
All right, your final thoughts, I take it.
That was it.
All right. Thank you so much. That is criminologist Dr. Jason McKay joining us here on CVM TV to discuss and break down the Vibes Cartel appeal ruling and what is anticipated in coming days, months, and possibly years. Thanks again, Dr. McKay.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.